Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to today's video where I am going to expose myself for attempting and failing 2 recent readathons and basically telling you what happened. Long story short, there were 2 readathons happening in August that I was so excited to participate in. I talked about them both in my monthly TBR. I was all set to go, and I actually did end up reading quite a few books for these readathons, but I was also intending to vlog, and those vlogs completely fell apart. Life got in the way, I got behind in filming my updates, and then enough time passed that it would be weird to come back and try to salvage those vlogs. And because it happened twice in a row, now I have this weird amount of books that I'm going to include in a future wrap-up, but when I talk about why I read them, I'm going to be talking about readathons that I don't have vlogs for, and it's getting to me, it's getting to my head, so I thought I would just do a video where I talk about the books that I read for those readathons. I insert the few clips that I do have of me talking about some of the books, and then I fill in the gaps where I need to. I don't know if this is a good video idea or not. Basically, I just wanted to talk about these readathons, especially because the hosts are some of my friends. They put time and effort and energy into planning them, and I was going to be vlogging and, promoting and participating, but I just didn't, and I want to still give them their time. So let's start with the full moon readathon. This was a nice long 13-day readathon planned by Jan over at Jan Agaton. This is her 2nd year hosting this readathon. I did participate last year. I have a wonderful dedicated vlog up from it. And this year I started strong. I did an intro. I even made a thumbnail already for the vlog. I had 4 books on my TBR. I ended up reading 3 of them, and I do have a first update clip for the first one, so I'll go ahead and insert that here. All right, I can give my first update for today. I am quite a ways into nothing to see here. Let me look quickly how far I am. I am 60% of the way through the book, and so far so good. Not a ton has happened. Basically, we're following this main character who is a woman who has had one of her old college friends, acquaintances reach out to her with a job opportunity that she goes and she takes, and she finds out it's caretaking for these 2 children who have this weird thing that happens to them where they get overheated and spontaneously burst into flames whenever they get super angry or worked up. It's very unclear why she was chosen for this job, why her old friend would have thought of her, or what makes her qualified for this, because she's really not. But she does pretty immediately start to form a really close bond with these children and help them control basically their emotions and control this kind of curse that they have on them. I don't think it's an actual curse, but I don't really know what else to call it. But yeah, it's pretty low stakes so far. She's just, getting integrated into their daily life, trying to help them control this issue that is only really an issue for other people. The fire doesn't hurt the children, so it's really only trying to control them so that they don't endanger other people and can live more of a normal life. And then we're also kind of uncovering some trauma that these kids have had in their life and why they are doing what they do. So as you can see for this one, I was enjoying it, but not loving it, and that continued through the end. After I finished this book, I can say I enjoyed it. I liked the metaphor for what kids bursting into flames seemed to stand for, and I liked how we were seeing their caregiver advocate for them when they couldn't advocate for themselves. That was all good. I just feel like I left this with a little bit of the feeling of what was the point, which is often how I feel about short slice of life type stories, which I would say this is. I can see why people like it. I wrote in my review that I'm not sure if I understand why so many people love this book, but I think in general people do usually like cozier, again, slice of life type stories that I don't always love. So for me, this landed at 3 stars. I'm glad I read it, but not a new favorite. This was for the prompt of reading a book between 206 and 300 pages. And then for the prompt of reading a hardback book, I read The Drift by CJ Tudor. I have since unhauled it because, spoiler, I didn't love it. But this is one of the few books that I owned physically and didn't have an audiobook for, so I thought this was the perfect readathon to knock it off of my TBR. And this was a weird one. So this book basically follows, I think it was 3 different scenarios, 3 different groups of people going through 3 different things. It's set in the winter, and I was confused and also differently interested in the different points of view throughout the story. There was one perspective following this group of kids who were on their way to this like private academy or something, and they were on a bus and it ended up crashing, so they were stranded. That one I found very interesting, while some of the other perspectives were far less interesting. So I didn't love the flipping between perspectives because some of them I didn't care about. I could have DNF'd this book multiple times, especially within the first 100 pages. I considered it. And I wrote in my review that I did appreciate that there was a big twist. I like that CJ Tudor went for it. I just didn't really enjoy the story or the ending or my reading experience. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I have unhauled it, like I said, and it was a little bit of a bummer, but at least I got it knocked off of my physical TBR. I did also write some content warnings into my review because it was pretty graphic and gory at some points of the story, and it takes place during a virus pandemic. So if you're sensitive to that, then be mindful of that before reading it. Then the next book that I picked up was for the prompt of reading a book with fire involved. I picked up The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren because there are fireworks on the cover. This is a sequel / companion novel to this author duo's book, The Soulmate Equation. I did enjoy that one. I gave it 4 stars. This one I enjoyed less. It just felt very forgettable to me. Pretty light and fluffy. It's about this main character, Fizzy, who is a romance author, and she gets cast as the lead on this dating show. She falls in love with the showrunner. It's not a plot that really appealed to me to begin with. I only picked it up because I did enjoy The Soulmate Equation, but they're pretty different books. I wish I had more to say about it or remembered more about it. My thoughts on this probably would have been better had I updated the blog in the moment as I was reading it, but unfortunately I didn't. So I gave this one 3 stars. And then the last book that I attempted to read for the Full Moon Readathon is called The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. I actually picked this book up with Jan when I was shopping in person with her in Chicago. She loved this book, she recommended it to me, so I picked it up and I was so excited to read it for this readathon. It fit perfectly for the prompt, which was to read a book with a morally gray character. This follows an Indian woman who has lost her husband. He walked out on her. She has no idea where he is, but everyone in her town thinks that she killed him. And then other women start coming to her asking her to kill their husbands. And she basically takes advantage of that, which definitely sounds like a morally gray character to me. I only made it 54 pages into this book, and then it just got away from me. The readathon ended, I hadn't finished this, and then I had other reading plans, so I never picked it back up. This is definitely a soft DNF. I've already put this back on my TBR cart because I do plan on getting to it in the nearest future. I think I'm going to enjoy it. I want to read it and talk to Jan about it. It just didn't work out in this readathon. So that's also why I didn't end up finishing that vlog, because I didn't have an ending to the books to talk about. So anticlimactic, no rating, DNF'd, not because I wasn't enjoying it, just ran out of time for it, and I'm excited to pick it back up someday, but that is the underwhelming ending of the update for the Full Moon Readathon. So apologies, Jan, if you're watching this. I intended to participate. If you do it again next year, I definitely will participate, but at least I got 3 of the 4 books read that I was planning on reading. Then the other readathon that happened in August that I was trying to participate in was the Back to School Readathon. This was hosted by some of my best friends here on BookTube, Gwen from Gwendolyn Kensinger, Jessie from Reading with Jess, Liv from Liv's Library, and Keisha from A Book Like You. They did a great job hosting this together. The graphics for this readathon were so cute. They did multiple live shows and reading sprints and games and stuff like that. I actually won the prize pack given away in one of the live shows, which was really fun. And I did read a bunch of books for this readathon. Again, the vlog just kind of fell apart. I do have some clips to insert here with books that I finished at the beginning of this readathon. The first book that I finished is The Sky Blues by Robbie Couch. This fulfills the prompt of reading a book with an academic setting. This takes place in high school. We follow this character named Sky, who is gay. He is out and he has a really big crush on this one guy at his school, and it's such a big crush that his best friend knows all about it. His best friend's parents know all about it, and he's planning this really big like promposal to this guy. And then all of a sudden one day his plans get blasted out to the school in order to kind of make fun of him for being obsessed with this guy that he likes. I really enjoyed this book. First of all, it's fun, it's over the top, it's cheesy. I think that's a little bit what you're getting when you read young adult contemporary books in this day and age. I enjoyed that this character's coming out was not really part of the storyline, though there are other characters, side characters, who do come out with their own identities, which I generally enjoyed. but it was more of him dealing with this one specific incident that happened to him related to his crush and everything. But it's not super typically your normal like coming out story. I don't think this is like groundbreaking literature, but I think for what it is, it was a really fun time. Was it unrealistic in some of the ways that like this school rallied around our main character? Absolutely yes. But was it fun and satisfying? Yes. So I'm gonna give this 4 stars. I didn't enjoy this book quite as much as If I See You Again Tomorrow, but that's okay. That just tells me that this author is improving in his writing, which I love. And I love that in that book he experimented with the sci-fi genre a little bit. This is straight up contemporary, which definitely makes sense as a place for an author to start, and now he can continue to grow and expand, and you bet I will be there along the way. I did listen to the audiobook of The Sky Blues, and then when I had a chance to read physically, I was reading The 7-Year Slip. This is for the prompt of a book with a number in the title. And you guys, this book had me on a complete roller coaster. This is about our main character who lives in this apartment. She has recently inherited it from her late aunt, who she used to travel with. She had a really close relationship with her, and she knew that her aunt's apartment had this like magical ability to send the person back in time 7 years. It's a very unexplained magic system, which I understand. I had lots of people tell me, like, don't try to look for answers when you're reading this book. The magic is not explained, it's just part of the story. And okay, got it. Not gonna ask questions about literally how this apartment does this thing, but I did still have questions afterwards, or questions throughout the book of these characters and like the decisions they were making given this situation. I feel like those are 2 different things, and I can still have logistical questions that don't have to do with the magical situation, but have to do with the characters and what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. So I started with lots of questions, and I will say a lot of them did get answered through the story. I had a list of questions in my phone that I was keeping, just that I didn't want to forget, that I wanted to be able to know if those specific questions got answered, and I'm not going to talk through them because most of them would be relatively spoilery, but most of them did get answered, and the few that didn't, I do just kind of have to be okay with accepting them either as a plot hole or as something I'm supposed to overlook or whatever. It just has to happen for the story to work. On top of that, I thought the relationship in this book was so good. Every single scene where these 2 main characters were together, their chemistry was so strong. Their little moments were super adorable, and I really, really liked it. I would love to see Ashley Poston write a true adult contemporary romance. No sci-fi element, no magical realism element. And I actually just recently became aware that Ashley Poston does have other young adult books, so I may go and check some of those out. I don't think she's written any other straight up contemporary romance books, but if she does, it could be a 5-star book for me. This one for now is 4 stars. I did enjoy this more than The Dead Romantics, which was released last year and a lot of people really loved. I've seen mixed reviews about whether people are liking this one more or less than that one, but I did like this one more. I will continue to pick up Ashley Poston's books as long as they continue to sound interesting to me. I'm happy I read this one. I am happy I enjoyed it. Overall, very good thoughts and would recommend. Okay, quick update. I started Dating You, Hating You on audio, and I've been listening to it for a couple of hours. I'm actually 43% of the way through, and I'm gonna DNF it. Unfortunately, these tropes just aren't working for me. It's a very kind of light, fluffy, cutesy romance, which is not typically my thing. This is about 2 main characters. We get perspectives from the female and the male. They both work in the like Hollywood industry. They're both talent agents, and they meet one day at a party through some mutual friends. They get along really well, they hit it off, it's going great. They learn that they are in the same industry, but they work for 2 different companies, competing companies, and then turns out one is acquiring the other, and they end up basically competing for the same job. I kind of like the parts of the book that are talking about like their day-to-day job, but it's much more about them like trying to get clients from each other, trying to get their boss to respect them more than the other person. It's just not coming off as cute to me. I've never really liked enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers as a trope as much as I enjoy like friends to lovers or second chance romance, things like that, where there's a little bit more of a history. So I can feel this headed towards 2-star territory maybe 3-star, but that would be a stretch. So I'm not gonna push through this one. I'm gonna keep it on my shelves because it's pretty, but I'm gonna knock it off of my TBR, which is also good. So on top of those 3 books that I read or attempted to read for the readathon, I also finished 3 more. The first one is The One by John Marrs. I ended up doubling up on that number prompt because I had 2 books on my TBR with numbers in the title. This is a sci-fi dystopian type book about this world where there's a DNA test that you can take that will tell you exactly who your soulmate is if they have also taken the test. We follow a whole bunch of different points of view in this book, I think like 4 or 5, and the situations range from people who are with partners that they find out they're not matches with, people who have matched with somebody who is now deceased, somebody who's matched with somebody of their same gender and they didn't think that they were queer. A lot of really interesting scenarios to explore. Because of that, it reminded me a lot of The Measure by Nikki Erlich, which is one of my absolute favorite books of all time, and I think that did this book a little bit of a disservice being so similar to it because I was comparing it to that book and it did not live up to that book. I found some of the points of view in here really compelling and then others really not, similar to The Drift. And something about this book, it's told in very, very short chapters, which for the most part, I, like a lot of other people, enjoy. Short chapters usually make me want to keep reading, but in this case, John Marrs paired short chapters with cliffhangers with alternating perspectives that actually made me annoyed every time I got to the end of a chapter, and it would leave off on some kind of cliffhanger that I knew I wasn't gonna get resolution to for another 4 or 5 chapters. And by the time I did, I had forgotten about what had even happened. It actually made it a very not fun reading experience. I wished I could have just read each point of view like all at once, get their whole story, and then switch to the next one so I could get fully invested in the next set of characters. It was weird. I had never really had that happen to me in a book before, but I noticed it in this one. Again, a good compelling premise, but fell a little bit short. I ended up rating this one 3 stars. The next book that I read for this readathon is The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams, which I read for the prompt of a book that contains an activity. The activity in this book is running and working out in general. This follows our main character, who is a writer for a magazine, and she is looking to start a fitness journey, kind of, just to overall feel healthier. So she gets assigned to write about this new fitness app, which assigns a coach to each person, and she ends up paired with this guy who also happens to be the CEO of this app. Yes, pretty unbelievable to start off with, but it was overall just a cute contemporary romance book. I liked the female plus-sized main character writing about her fitness journey. I didn't like that the main conflict of this book was really just dependent on the 2 main characters deciding to keep secrets from each other for no real reason. It again didn't feel super realistic. In general, a fun time, light and fluffy, not a new favorite, will not stick in my mind forever. I'm glad I read it. I'll continue picking up Denise Williams books, but a 3-star rating from me. And then the last book that I read for this readathon was to fulfill the prompt of a book with multiple timelines. I read Throwback by Maureen Gu. And why do I have this book? I don't know. I think I had put it on my wish list just because I had seen the cover, I had heard the premise, it sounded interesting, but I haven't heard anybody else talk about this book before, so I didn't really know what I was getting into. But this is a young adult, contemporary with a sci-fi element book about this main character who is in high school, and she's got this mom that she just does not get along with. Her mom wants the daughter to like campaign to become homecoming queen. They are Korean American, so her mom just really cares about like her high school image and wants the best for her daughter, but her daughter does not care about that at all, so they really butt heads. And then all of a sudden, one day, our main character ends up going back in time to when her mom was in high school. She ends up befriending her mom at high school age, and yeah, healing their relationship through trying to get the mom to win homecoming queen. It's very over the top and cheesy YA. It felt a lot like Freaky Friday or 17 Again. It's basically like a combination of those 2 movies. It was cheesy and it was heavy-handed with his messaging, but it did get the message across and it was still fun to read about. So I liked it. I would recommend it if that premise does sound good to you, as long as you understand that you're just in it for a fun, cheesy ride. So I ended up giving it 3 stars and I am glad that I read it. So those are the books that I read for those two readathons. I don't really know how to conclude this video because I don't feel like I really accomplished anything, but hopefully it was entertaining or helpful to see somebody fail at trying to participate in all the readathons that happen here on BookTube. It's happened before, I'm sure it will happen to me again. I don't want to beat myself up too hard about it, but again, just wanted to get the word out about these fun readathons happening and share some thoughts on the books that I did end up reading. Let me know if you participated in either of these readathons, what books you ended up reading, and if you enjoyed them, or if you've read any of the books that I talked about and what you thought. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else, so thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.